Finally, for thousands of years, maps have been a powerful tool of travel, discovery, and imagination. Google is now working to complete the world's map, adding rich, immersive mapping content for every place and for every person on the planet. Stafford Marquardt of the Google Street View team is helping to lead this exciting project. So let's welcome Stafford to the stage.
Well, I'm glad you're all thinking about streets and neighborhoods and cities, because we're going to keep going with that. I'm Stafford. I'm product manager for Google Street View. And today we're going to talk about filling in the map. So this is a story about our journey to map every street on Earth. For only the second time in human history, we will have a single record of every place on the planet, and that record will be available for the whole world to see. So why do we say the second time? Well, at some point in ancient history, someone created the first road. And at that time, every road on Earth was known to humanity. And more roads followed, and since that time, we've been working to chart our whole world. And maybe that first road looked something like this. Maybe that doesn't count as a road at all. But what's clear is that the first verifiable paved roads were created in Babylonia at least 6,000 years ago. These roads were paved with stone, like most ancient roads, until very recently. So to map their roads, along with the rest of their empire, the Babylonians created maps. The first world map known to science came from Babylon over 8,000 years ago, and it's this clay tablet. It's got some drawings, it's got this legend, it's written in cuneiform, and if you couldn't read cuneiform, which probably nobody in this room can, including the person on stage, you probably wouldn't even know that it's a map at all. So since it's doubtful that anybody can read it, including me, let's bring up this legend. And with the help of our legend, we can see that these engravings are actually a map, and it's centered on Babylon, which is running west to east, and the Euphrates River running north to south. And it's surrounded by this circular ocean. There's all these other little civilizations of the era. So let's rotate that with some PowerPoint magic. And now we can see it alongside this more modern map of the region, which you might be familiar with if you've played around on Google Earth anytime in the past 10 years. So the first paper maps that we know of came from ancient Egypt over 3,000 years ago. This piece of papyrus is the oldest surviving one. It's also the first topographic map for any of the hikers in the room. Imagine going into the backcountry with this. Yeah, bad jokes, there's going to be more, so get ready. Yeah, so as we get into the early Middle Ages, we see maps that actually resemble things that we're familiar with. This one was made for the king of Sicily in the year 1138, and this was the most accurate map for 300 years following. As we get into the age of exploration, we now have 5 continents, not just 3. This was done by the Spanish House of Trade to map all of Spain's trade interests, and it also showed that you can't just sail through that landmass, you have to go the long way around. This is probably the most important map of all time, the Mercator Map. And this map projection, that is the way of showing the spherical world on a flat surface, is still used today. In fact, if you used Google Maps to get here, you used a Mercator Map. It looked better than this, but you used a Mercator Map. There's this West Wing episode that some of you are probably familiar with. I don't have time to show it, but the people who would laugh know it anyway, so we'll skip that. By 1664, we have 6 continents, 6. They're not all complete, but they're there. It's pretty exciting. And by 1794, all the coastlines are reasonably accurate. So you could probably use this today, some limited value. And by the end of the 19th century, the map actually looks pretty familiar. We have 7 continents, which I think we still have today. And the shape of the world leaves nothing major for us to complain about. So things sort of stop there for a while. Like borders change. There's some phantom islands that come and go. For the most part, though, you could take this National Geographic map from 1922, fold it out of the magazine, and hang it on a wall today. Yeah, there are going to be some issues with borders, but you could hang it on a wall today. So we didn't actually need to wait for satellites to get this accurate map of our world. But speaking of satellites, we got our first photo from space just a few decades afterwards. 1946, camera went up on a V-2 rocket, smashed back down into the desert, fished the film out of the wreckage. This is one of the probably most important photos of the 20th century. But it gets better. Speaking of important photos, this is the most viewed photo in the entire history of humanity NASA's blue marble taken by the Apollo 17 crew. So what this did, it didn't help the map. Like, we had a pretty good map at that point in time. What this did is it gave people perspective on the world. It allowed them to reach out and do good for everyone. So 3 decades later, Google Earth arrives on the scene, allowing people to not only take in the whole world, but to also virtually zoom in and fly to any corner of it. About a decade ago, Street View comes on the scene. So you can not just fly around Waikiki Beach, but you can actually dive in and look around. And maybe you can't go for a swim, but when we bring out the Google teleporter, you guys can all be the first to try. See, the bad jokes, they're going to keep coming. So Street View brings people to all corners of the Earth, from the ski slopes of Whistler to the Great Barrier Reef, from the pyramids all the way up to the International Space Station, which, by the way, you should go check out on Google Maps right after this if you haven't already. So let's spend a couple of minutes reflecting on these last 10 years of Street View with this video. So that's pretty cool, right? 80 countries mapped. But we're not done yet. So this is the map of Street View today. And this is the map of just Street View. Look at how much is missing. And this is important. This isn't just important because people need to see what the rest of the world looks like. It's true, it's a good thing for humanity for people to see what other people live like, but there's more to it than that. Street View is the huge, probably the biggest ingredient in the way that Google makes maps. And without Street View, the map just isn't quite complete. So if we want to map every street in the world and help people find all of the places and businesses on those streets, then we need to fill in these blanks. But now you can help. So we're opening up Street View as a platform where anyone can contribute. So you can help as we build this virtual library of the entire planet together. So let's find out how. So if you forget about the caveman at the very beginning, this will be the first time in human history that we actually finish the map, and we can do it together. So let's take a quick look at some of the things that people have already done. Some of you might actually be in the room, so feel free to clap if you see your thing up here. Here is an example of a safari lodge in South Africa showing the amazing trails around their park that you can explore by Jeep. More broadly, South Africa is actually home to one of the coolest Street View stories, where the tourism group Drive South Africa worked with local communities to map every single national park in the country. So you don't have to do it yourself. In Bermuda, the national DMO drove around the whole island, and thanks to some help from Miles, updating existing Street View imagery and adding all the missing streets as well. So this doesn't just need to be making new Street View. It can also be updating old Street View that doesn't reflect the world around you anymore. In Tonga, the team at Grid Pacific worked with local agencies to put the entire country on Street View, helping with tourism, disaster prep, cultural outreach, and many more things. In Fort Lauderdale, a lot of the waterways are used as roads. They're almost as important as roads. So this clever waterway view project has been putting miles and miles of them on Street View as well. And speaking of off-road projects, check out what Visit Mammoth did with their ski runs. This is all from a very talented snowboarder wearing a 360-degree camera on his backpack and going down the ski runs. And of course, while we're in Anaheim, we can't leave out Disney. So if you can't make it over to the park this week, you can always take a look later at Street View and see what you're missing. So wherever you are, big cities, tiny islands, snowy mountains, blistering savannas, you can show the world your world. So some quick notes on how to get started with your own Street View Delorean. So making your own Street View is quick and easy. You grab a compatible camera from our website, and you upload the imagery to Google Maps. We also have a camera loan program, so if you're not ready to buy a camera just yet, you can borrow one absolutely free and try mapping your town. And if you're more interested in indoor virtual tours than outdoor mapping, we have several options for those as well. This is all on the Street View website at google.com/streetview/publish. You can, of course, just search for Street View and get here as well. But wait, there's more. So Street View is just one of many tools that Google offers for DMOs, absolutely for free. So to learn more about these tools, join us tomorrow for an in-depth workshop where we show you how to get started building your presence on Google. So Google's absolutely serious about our commitment to DMOs. You're one of our most important partners in expanding Street View coverage. DMOs have already done amazing things throughout the world, as you've seen. We're looking forward to working with you more closely over the months and years to come. So thanks, Anaheim. We hope to see you again at our booth, at our workshop tomorrow, and hopefully actually on Street View as well.